I was a soldier once, because you had to be in those days. It was called national service. And the sort of war we were preparing for and being trained for was at the height of the Cold War, completely different what's going on in the world now. There are very few clashes of industrial armies in the sense that of major battles. Instead, there are wars are fought among the people for the allegiance of the people. And increasingly, they're being fought not by boots on the ground, or not much, but by drones and unmanned aerial vehicles and everything the modern technology can devise. It's been a complete transformation.
That's supported entirely by Ben Wallace, the UK Defence Minister, who said this month: the future of defence is about converting scientific and technological genius into the heart of defence capability. What does that say to you about the future of war?
It says to me that the British armed forces are going to be downsized yet again. And they can argue that boots on the ground are not as effective as they used to be. I mean, if you got the whole of the British Army together, it would now fit into Wembley Stadium with space to spare. So they are going to rely increasingly on the wonders of modern technology, on drones and similar vehicles. And anybody who's joining the British Army now will find out, if after he's done or she's done there 22 years, it'll be completely transformed again by the time they leave.
So you see the future of war as being mainly conducted from the air?
Actually, I see the present of war, and they're not necessarily by major powers either. In the present conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan, drones are being used, I believe, by both sides. Whereas the British had a difficult and challenging experience in Helmand province for something like 10 years, where there were boots on the ground. That place has been taken by US Marines flying drones and all sorts of pilotless vehicles and so on. But this was already starting as far back as 1973. If you remember the Yom Kippur War, the over-the-horizon technology, laser-guided missiles, that is the present and increasingly the future of warfare. If there have to be wars, and I hope they don't.
So in future, it's not going to be so much an arms race as a technological race.
Yes, I think whoever has the best scientists wins. But of course, there has to be investment. And you need highly trained military people to make the technology work. You're not dispensing with people altogether, but you are locating them further back where they will suffer fewer casualties.
Let's move on, Martin, to peacekeeping, which is a large part of your book. Does peacekeeping start before a conflict or only start after a conflict?
Sometimes it starts before. The reason in all of the Balkan wars in Slovenia, in Croatia, and most tragically in Bosnia, peacekeepers were needed after the conflict began. But they were deployed in time in Macedonia, and they prevented a war there. A prevention is always best if it can be done. But the danger is that these things get out of control, and peacekeeping is very complex. It requires highly trained soldiers. It's completely different from war fighting. And one of the lessons I think we learned, certainly in the Bosnian War, which I covered extensively, is that when peacekeepers are deployed, they have to be in sufficient numbers to enforce a mandate which makes sense from the start. One of the British commanders in Bosnia was telling me that we were just asked to make it up as we went along. So we have learned some of those lessons, and I thought, because I've been a witness to these things, the time had come to write some of them down.
Do peacekeepers have more chance of keeping the peace if they have the better technology?
it takes not only better technology, but a sufficiency of numbers. And they have to be, they need what the military call interoperability. That is, they are trained to work with one another. This is why the most effective peacekeepers of ex-Yugoslavia were probably from the NATO countries, because they had a common doctrine and they were used to working with each other. That is absolutely vital, and so is intelligence, in the sense of information gathering. In the Balkan Wars, the UN forces were very short of accurate intelligence.
What about China? Does it have a role as a peacekeeper?
I would like to think so. I would like to think so.
They have a high number of boots on the ground, don't they? Certainly in Sudan, as UN peacekeepers.
I would like to think, yes, that they do, in the same way as I would like to see the Americans involved in peacekeeping. So I think in the, the world is a mess at the moment. Just look around, various conflicts and collisions. I would like to think a role could be found, a substantive one, both for American and Chinese forces under a blue helmet.
So artificial intelligence technology may be changing the face of war, but how is it, if it is, changing the face of peacekeeping? The peacekeepers are always slow to catch up. Their communications need to be better than they have been. There are something like 14 international UN peacekeeping missions around the world, half of them actually in Africa. And in Africa, the circumstances have been very challenging. I think it would be hard to count as any one of them as a success. I mean, I've seen these wars not only as a war reporter, but also for the last 20 or so years, I've been a UNICEF ambassador. So I go to places, or I have been to places like South Sudan, where the failure of the UN mission has been absolutely spectacular. On the other hand, I think that the mainly Irish troops in Lebanon, we've been there for many, many years, they've taken their casualties, but they have prevented small outbreaks from turning into a wider conflict most of the time.